Okay, welcome to this short introduction to how virtualization works and to provide you some options on which way to go. Okay, so virtualization is a really cool concept. The idea of a physical machine having an operating system installed and then another guest virtual machine on the inside. And this is pretty cool because the guest machine could be temporary. For example, you're installing some software for a class that you'll never ever use again. Well, rather than clutter up your main machine, fire up a virtual machine, a VM, install the software, and when you're done, you just blow it away. It's pretty doggone cool. So you do have to have a license for the thing that you're installing. I mean, if you're having Windows 11 and you're going to install another copy of Windows 11 in a virtual environment, you're going to need a license key. But that's easy for students because we have Azure for students. It used to be called Azure DevTools for teaching, and that provides you plenty of licenses. Anyway, and it works really cool in the classroom too, because in the classrooms, for example, you're not an administrator on your machine at all. But if I install a VM, well, then every student has complete control over that virtual machine. They can install anything they want. They can uninstall, change, whatever. So it's a really cool idea. So again, I like it because it's portable. I mean, you can literally carry a virtual machine around with you, like on a USB flash drive or something. You can freeze something in the middle. I mean, you're right in the middle of typing. Mary had a little, and you can just stop the machine, go to lunch, whatever, come back and pick it up exactly where you left off, and the cursor is exactly where you left it. So this could be, you power the whole machine down and it brings it back up exactly the way you left it. That is cool. And you can do this thing called a snapshot, which basically makes a copy of what you've got. So if you're getting ready to do something kind of dangerous or maybe it might blow up, you do a snapshot first, go in and try something, and you go, oh man, I don't want that. Let me get back to where I was. And dink. And we're only talking about 15 seconds or so, and bam, you're right back to the way you were before. And some courses require you to make a screenshot to show that you progress along. It has a built-in way of doing that. Pretty doggone cool. And most people can find a virtualization option that costs nothing. VirtualBox is a common one. VMware has a VMware player, and I think there's a free version of Parallels, but I don't use that one. So let's just go through some of the technical choices here. And if you're not a technical person, you can kind of zone out a little bit. Virtualization, there's two different types. There's a heavy duty type called a Type 1 hypervisor, and it is fantastic. You can do this in a server environment or at home. Great. Um, it's very fast, but it's not portable. I can't yank a virtual machine and take it with me and go plug it into some other machine and pick up where I left off. That doesn't work. So we use, typically in the classroom, we use a Type 2 hypervisor. There's lots of choices. I just mentioned some of the obvious ones like VirtualBox. Sometimes some courses require that you have either a real x86 64 CPU architecture or you have to emulate it. So if you only have an Apple Mac, then you have to emulate, not virtualization, but emulation. And there's some choices there. And then, of course, if none of that works, you can always just go to the cloud and do everything remotely. It's pretty doggone cool. Okay, so here's basically a flow chart. If you were required to do virtualization for a class, then here's what you would probably have to do. If you just have a plain old everyday machine, an x86 64-bit architecture, well then just use some virtualization software like VirtualBox and install Windows and then install whatever software you want on the guest. Now, if you have an ARM-based PC, you're still going to use virtualization, but you're going to install an ARM-based version of Windows. And then you install all the software you need. Now, how well is this going to work? To tell you the truth, this is not fully tested. There's an awful lot of software out there that Microsoft says not supported. Now, that doesn't mean it won't run. It just means if there's a problem, they're not going to fix it. If you have an older based Mac, which probably no one does these days, well, you just use normal virtualization, just like over here. But if you have a new Apple Silicon and you require Emulation, in other words, I'm running some stuff that absolutely, positively must have a traditional x86 64-bit architecture. You have to use a software called UTM if your course requires it. Otherwise, you can use emulation and install, again, an ARM-based version of Windows and then install the software. Again, this is not fully tested. Most people do not have a problem, but I'm just telling you, it's not completely supported. So again, let's talk about emulation. So virtualization creates a guest that has the same CPU architecture as a host. I mean, there's no magic going on. If you have an Intel machine, it's going to it's going to virtualize an Intel machine. If you have a Mac or ARM based, it's going to, virtualize a Mac or ARM based. Now consider an Apple Mac, and you install an ARM based version of Windows, and practically everything works. I mean, again, I can't swear on a stack of Bibles that every piece of software required by a course is going to work. However, some scenarios do require emulation. There's some courses where, I'm sorry, you have to have a traditional x86 machine. So in that case, you use software called UTM. I have an M1 Mac Mini, and I installed a traditional version of Windows 10 and an older version of SQL Server, and everything works. It's not incredibly fast, but it works. Okay, cloud-based solutions. Instead of doing anything local at all, you can subscribe to a cloud-based thing. Students, by virtue of the fact that you're a student, get 750 hours of this free access to Azure Virtual Desktop. Anyway, and it works great if you have a wimpy machine. And this will run on anything. I mean, it'll run on a Chromebook. You can even run it on your phone. I mean, it's everything. You do require a halfway decent internet thing. Finding Azure Desktop is not at all easy to find. Maybe I should have just gone up there to search. But, you scroll through here and scroll through here and scroll through here. And finally, you can find one that says, Azure Desktop. I mean, again, it's not incredibly easy to find. I'm just going to type in Azure Desktop. Oh, it helps you spell it right. Azure Virtual Desktop. Okay. And so anyway, they talk about how you can fire this guy up and you get 750 hours and blah, 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 blah. You can pick between Windows 10 or Linux or whatever you want. Anyway, it's a little tough to find, but other than that, it's in good shape. More on VirtualBox. If free and open source, cool. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, Linux. Supports a gazillion guest operating systems. And the cool part about it is I can put it on a drive and take it home. I can work on it on something in the classroom, put it on a USB hard drive, take it home, pick up where I left off, bring it back. So all I'm carrying is just a USB disk with me. Anyway, it's already installed on our machines in the university, so that's cool. All right. So pros and cons. So Hyper-V is very fast, but it's not portable, and it's certainly not going to work carrying stuff back and forth. UTM, if you absolutely positively must have an x86 64-bit architecture, well, then you have to use emulation, and it is not quick. Cloud-based, pretty doggone cool. It doesn't require a robust PC, but you do need a halfway decent fast internet. And then, of course, VirtualBox is very portable. It runs on practically anything. It's not as fast as Hyper-V, but it's pretty doggone cool. Okay, that's a whirlwind tour of everything you should need to know about, how to proceed. Okay, that's about it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.